We say we believe every person is made in God's image, but belief becomes powerful when it becomes action. Through This Moment Matters, we are responding to hunger, displacement, and fragile health systems with compassion and courage. Not someday, now. Your generosity becomes medicine. It becomes food. It becomes hope. Right now, your gift can help a family in need. Visit giveumcmission.org/future and join the ministry, because this moment and every life matters.
The world is becoming increasingly proficient at telling stories that deny God. As such, we need Thinking Christian to become as natural as breathing. Welcome to the Thinking Christian podcast. I'm Dr. James Spencer. Through calm, thoughtful, theological discussions, Thinking Christian highlights the ways God is working in the world and questions the underlying social, cultural, and political assumptions that hinder Christians from becoming more like Christ. Now, on to today's episode of Thinking Christian. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Thinking Christian. I'm Dr. James Spencer, and I'm joined today by Angela Weszely, and we're going to be talking about her new book, Becoming Pro-Grace, Expanding the Abortion Conversation Beyond Life versus Choice. Angela is not only the author of the book, but she's also the CEO and founder of Pro-Grace. It's an organization that really facilitates transformative learning experiences from Christ followers to break through the abortion divide. So the book and the ministry kind of go hand in hand.
Yep.
Welcome, Angela. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here, James.
Well, tell us a little bit about, I always like when I have an author on, I always like to understand kind of where they're coming from, what brought them to this topic. And so what was your life experience that brought you into writing Becoming Pro-Grace?
Very interesting. So as I was growing up, I grew up in a household that to be Christian was to be pro-life. I didn't really, question that. I did have some tension, even as a teenager, hearing it brought up in school, different things that happened, but I didn't get involved in the issue, right? I don't think a lot of people do, right? I was just like, I feel a little tense about it. I'm not really comfortable with it. It was just mainly my view. And so I spent 10 years in Christian ministry, and then we left that ministry we were with and started doing some different sales work and different things. And when I felt like I wanted to go back into ministry again, I found a Christian pregnancy center that was in downtown Chicago. And when I read what they did, they supported women who were pregnant. And I thought, this is great. This will be common ground. It won't be political. And so I took that position. Actually, I took a position as director of development 20 years ago in 2005. And quickly realized, this organization is smack dab in the middle of the debate. I had no idea when I came in, and I had no idea how Christians were framing this issue, especially those who were in direct service work with women. So that journey basically was, I was uncomfortable. I had trusted colleagues and wonderful people working around me who weren't trying to do anything offensive. Their hearts were really for helping women. I started feeling like we are not seeing the women. Like there's a definite agenda running through here, that this is about the child, and the way we talked to donors about it, even the way we advertised on our website that we would be a certain place. And then when women came in, there was more of a persuasion model that wasn't disclosed ahead of time. Things like that made me incredibly uncomfortable, because I come from a more legalistic background, and I had been freed by grace, a true theological understanding of the radical grace of Jesus. And I realized walking into this is a very legalistic way of approaching this. It's actually not aligned with the gospel of grace. And that started me with I really did start almost with a theological deconstructing of why, and trying to talk to people around me, the board, other staff, to have a different framework. And I should say this because I tried to make changes right away. So I started leading the organization about a year after I came in, and I told the board, I'm going to make these changes. We need to be equally for the woman and the child. And they were like, yes. And we were all like, how hard can this be? It was incredibly difficult, because what I didn't realize is we have mental models that we don't even know where they came from. They've just been with us or with our stream of Christianity for so long that when someone says something different, it's like, well, have you switched to the other side, or are you promoting a totally different approach? And so I had to go way back, I wrote an 8-page paper that I would send to the pastor of the Moody Church, who was thankfully connected to our organization. And I would write back and forth and say, this is how I think Jesus interacted with people and how he would value the woman and child equally. This is what I want to implement through the whole organization. But it really was theology and heart change first before we could do any type of the direct service work. So where that leads me to ProGrace today is that I wanted to see my whole team, I should say, all of us wanted to see our partner churches be welcome spaces for women who are pregnant, whether they were connecting from our organization or within that congregation. And so we thought, do we know that everywhere is safe? Again, well-meaning people, but are we safe for this conversation? And that is where I started writing with a colleague that same theology in an experiential form for anyone in the church. It wasn't just for our direct service organization anymore. I developed a passion that we as the capital C church could have a theological paradigm that is not tied to either political party, but is really rooted in Jesus. And that's why I launched ProGrace about 10 years ago.
So talk a little bit about the ProGrace framework that you've developed, because I think that is really crucial. Again, I've had some experience in this realm and I've found it very interesting the way very well-meaning Christians understand the abortion issue.
Yes.
And how the Republican platforms, the Democratic platforms very much shape the discourse around this. And so I think I'm identifying some of the same things that you're identifying is what we really need is a Christian mind about this, that we can approach this issue and really have a robust theological discourse about what's going on and see the problem beyond the political conversations so that really Christ can govern this whole conversation. That's a fair way to put it.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it. That is my heart and the whole reason ProGrace exists. Because, and we were talking before the show, why you named your show Christianity Without Compromise is that you want to see Christians living out the truth of Scripture, which is the story of Jesus, right? And his whole example, he showed us who the Father is. And what I've realized along the way is that by defaulting to primarily political positions and for Christians to lead with, I'm pro-life or I'm pro-choice, and then use those same words, that same posture, that is compromising our faith. It's compromising our Christian witness because we have an entire canon of Scripture that shows us what God is like. And neither political party is governed by that. They're not governed by what God is like. To be a political party, you have to rally your followers, right? So there has to be rhetoric. There has to be another side or sometimes even an enemy. And in this particular case, the messaging goes out that you're either for the child or for the woman, right? And actually, when you think about the laws, they're viewed as a zero-sum game. There's a winner and there's a loser. It's either legal or it's not. It's either better for children or better for women. And so everything around that gets framed in an either or and puts women and children in a adversarial role and then puts us as Christians even in adversarial roles against each other, depending on which political party we are. So that's why the ProGrace framework starts by stepping back and saying, what if we imagined laying that down for a second? And I'm not calling anyone to not be political or to lay down political affiliation.
Sure.
What I'm saying is, what if we used our imagination to think, how would Jesus interact with this issue? What's the actual Jesus-centered lens to view this through and make that our primary affiliation, lead with that, and then make our political viewpoints secondary? What would happen? I mean, it is kind of an experiment, right? Like, what would happen? So then I don't have any questions about that before I launch into the actual theology of the ProGrace framework.
I don't think so. I mean, I think what I hear you saying is that really it's something that, I don't know, I take from Augustine, right? It's about the ordering of loves, and that he's got this wonderful analogy, and I've said it before on the show, but it's you take all your other loves and you throw them into the current of God's love, your love for God. And so they're immersed within that, and they're then conditioned by it. They change and shift, but your love of God stays sturdy and strong. And that's basically what I hear you saying is let's sort of nest these other things within a real deep loyalty and devotion to God. And when we do that, it's not that those things have to go away.
Right.
It's that the way we interact with them is going to change because not even our first loyalty, our only loyalty is to God. We are giving him all we are and have. And because we've given all that loyalty to God, the way we interact with anything else is going to change.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say there are so many thoughtful Christians on both political sides that's their intent. We believe we're doing that, but we've only been given these two options, right? So that's where the rub comes is to really try to lay them down first and think not just our love for God, but God's love for us. God's love for humanity. It really starts there. What does that look like? And that's the pro-grace framework is rooted in these two theological points. The first is equal value, equal dignity. So that's everything we've talked about. There's a false binary of are you going to advocate for the woman or the child, where God is equally passionate about both. There's equal dignity for both. If we could just start from that posture, we start to see how so many of the political framing is not helpful because it doesn't take that into consideration. And that in itself can be a very uniquely Christian response, is that we value the imago Dei in every person equally. And we're going to start all of our thinking, our conversations, and our engagement from that place. That already shifts a ton. And then the second theological point is grace as the path for transformation. And so again, I do think there's a lot of judgment, there's legalism starting even within the church and how we view other people who may think differently from us or the other side politically. And to be honest, from my experience, even ourselves, I think a lot of this comes from not understanding grace for ourselves means that we have to pick some of these issues that we feel really Christian in, right? But when we understand that God loves us exactly as we are, and we can start from this freedom of grace and have that shape every conversation and how we view every person touched by this issue, that then is the second piece of the framework that really starts to form this uniquely Christian response to abortion and hopefully unite us as Christians around those things first, those shared values with Jesus as our model, following his example.
And how do you think through, let's say you have a Republican and a Democrat, right? And they're both sort of championing these causes. How do you think about bringing those two together other than lifting them out of a political party and back up into the body of Christ as their animating identity? I mean, it just seems to me that the two pillars of that pro-grace framework, the imago Dei and the grace that we need to give one another, that we need to give ourselves, we need to give others, those two really do point backwards as opposed to embedding us within any one political party. They remind us that there has to be something prior to these arrangements that really is where we should be rooting our identities in.
Absolutely. Yes. And so over the years, the community that makes up pro-grace actually are Christians who are both, who have to choose one of those political parties. And so we all do, with the understanding that that political party cannot contain the heart of God. I would say that is the first place. If there are Christians who really believe that their political party is the arm of God, then this is not a conversation that's going to be helpful or resonant. And I don't know I wouldn't know how to talk to someone, but the vast majority of Christians that I talk to default. There's this sense of, well, there's a default. I'm uncomfortable with some parts of my preferred political side, but I have to tip somewhere. That is the ideal place. That's the ideal thought process of a Christian who can say, oh, actually, this would relieve my tension that I feel about my political party if I could have my kingdom affiliation or, my Christian affiliation sit above that. That actually, and it doesn't mean that we aren't still a Democrat or Republican. It means we don't lead with that. We don't try to stir up conflict with that. We do set it down for the sake of being reformed and understanding how much we've been formed by political parties instead of Jesus. So I would say that's what we do all day long. And one of the tools is I don't tell anybody how I vote. I actually don't tell anybody how I vote. And you don't have to be that way to be pro-grace. But I just found it most helpful in my position because I will not be able to talk to people if that is something I talk about. But I talk about abortion all the time, and I talk about it through this theological lens and have very productive conversations. And I never ask the person I'm talking to how they vote. Now, they might volunteer it. But the second piece is to be committed to not view my sister or brother the way I've been trained through a political party, to see them as different from me because they tip to one side politically. I really think as Christians committed to the Imago Dei and grace, we will have more in common with each other than we will the fringes on our political party. And that, I think, is the challenge for Christians, to see ourselves as believers first, seeking this unity, and then our politics second or third or wherever that falls for different people.
Health insurance rates in America are surging, leaving millions without affordable options. But Christians don't need to waste money on a broken system. Christian Healthcare Ministries is an alternative to health insurance at half the cost. With CHM, fellow believers contribute monthly to help pay each other's medical bills while lifting one another up in prayer. It's financial and spiritual support when you need it most. Join CHM today by visiting chministries.org/wellness. That's chministries.org/wellness.
Faith shapes how we live, and it should shape how we steward our money too. That's why 316 Financial exists. We're an online bank created to help people align their finances with their faith and their values. At 316 Financial, 10% of our profits are given back to faith-based ministries, supporting work that makes a lasting difference. It's a simple idea. Everyday banking can be a powerful way to live generously, and you don't have to sacrifice quality to bank with purpose. 316 Financial offers modern online banking, no monthly fees, free ATM access nationwide, and competitive interest rates designed to help your money grow responsibly. Whether you're saving for the future, managing everyday expenses, or looking for a bank that reflects what matters most to you, 316 Financial makes it easy to bank with intention. Learn more and open an account today at bank316.com. Banking services are provided by 316 Financial, a division of Primis Bank, member FDIC.
Right. And like when and I don't want to make this all about the politics, but I think it's a big part of this.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I just want to ask kind of a follow-up question on it. But it strikes me that what you're talking about, if let's say you have a Christian who's part of the pro-grace movement, they're really rooting their identity back in Christ, not in their political party, but they are still participating in those political parties. It seems to me that what we'd love to see happen, what I would love to see happen, is for those Christians to say, let's say you're advocating for your particular party is advocating for the rights of women, right? But that there would be consideration at the policy level, an advocacy for, no, it also needs to care for the child, and the balance on the other side of, we really want to care for the child, but we have to recognize that there are a lot of social and economic issues that we've got to care for if we really want to make. I always go back to something my wife says. She works in hospitals a lot, and in these, sort of high reliability environments, they say, let's make it easy for people to make the right choice. And it feels like, within that political environment, that's what we would want. We'd want Christians advocating for, yes, we want to have this child protected, but we also want to make it easier for women to make the right choice. And is that sort of how this would play itself out? Am I catching the drift of it?
Yeah, this is a great conversation because you're totally understanding. I just do want to stop on a word choice. We talked about this before the podcast.
Yeah, this is good.
Even saying, and I get why your wife is saying it in healthcare, because that means like taking care of their diabetes or whatever. But I think, helping women make the right choice is still loaded politically and has been used to a way that can feel very shaming to women. This doesn't mean we don't have ethical thoughts about abortion. And we can't really talk about it. I mean, there's a lot in the book about this because I have 50,000 words to not be misunderstood. I have an ethical view on the act of abortion. Christians can have an ethical view on it. What I'm saying is when we make some of these statements that we've just been conditioned to make, it sends a signal that we still are going to be pushing people in some way, or we're not truly welcoming, or we're not without agenda. So the way I would frame it theologically is that if we go right back to the mystery of pregnancy, and we think about God's design, he did not have to do it this way, right? If we sit with the mystery of God, he could have done it a different way, but there is something we need to pause on, that it's entrusted to women, first of all. And secondly, there's a man and a woman involved, which is also an important, I mean, you can already hear what I'm touching on, a lot of really important things. Oh yeah. And women are entrusted to nurture another person. They're intertwined for 9 months. And the fact is that if you've ever been around someone who's pregnant, you understand anything we do to one affects the other, right? Yeah. It is this intertwined relationship. If you want to get really meta theologically, you could even start to think about what it says about all creation and how we're interdependent on each other, which is why I'm promoting this way of peace and reconciliation. Yeah. So with that, I think going in with an equal value, equal dignity could completely reframe political discussions. And I am a dreamer. I could see that happening. I don't know how many years out, but I think it needs to start coming from Christians, like you're saying, because I think it comes from a uniquely Christian place of saying, listen, if we truly value both people, then how could we work together? Because both women and children deserve all these social structures you're talking about. We make it incredibly difficult to raise children. I mean, I don't know if we want to go into this, but we rank like 40th out of 40 countries in guaranteed maternity leave. Could Christians from both parties say, wait a second, enough, because of the Imago Dei, we're going to step in and advocate for these policies. I looked to try and find common ground policies that had been passed in Congress. There is one that was passed about pregnancy and parenting, which was great, but it took like 10 years because there's so little work across the aisle. And we are fighting about things that are largely irrelevant to people on the ground saying, this is all I can see to do because of all these other factors happening. And it is one of the things that makes me the most crazy and it's why I'd like to take attention away from the political, what we disagree on. And you hit it. There are so many policies we could work on together as believers that would show God's value and dignity for both people. And we're busy doing other things.
Well, let me ask you this question, because this is something I've thought about. Jesus at one point is confronted about divorce, and he sort of responds. The Pharisees and the Sadducees are asking him, like, why did Moses tell us to get a certificate of divorce if God's against divorce? And Jesus basically says it was because of the hardness of your heart. And what it suggests to me is that the law is there in some respects to manage human sinfulness. We often talk about it as a restraint. But obviously that it can't transform the heart, and it isn't always prescribing an ideal. It's often dealing with brokenness. Right. And so I'm wondering that sort of lead in for this question is, how does the pro-grace framework help us recognize the limitations of the law, the limitations of the political environment, and how far policy can go? I think policy is important, right? Laws are important, but they have a limit. And then that limit is where the church really needs to kick in. I go back to a work by David Fitch. Maybe you're familiar with it, but The Great Giveaway. If you're familiar with that book, he talks about the church and how it's given away some of the things that are crucial to its witness to these different entities that are around. And I think politics, and he references that too. I just happen to agree with him. We tend to lean on government like it can fix everything. Like if we just have the right laws and policies in place, like this will work. So how does the pro-grace framework help us to sort of step back and go, no, the church could really own this issue in a unique way without abandoning policy,
Yeah.
But using policy supplementally and where it's appropriate.
Amazing. Well, first of all, will you put that book in the show notes? I need to read that book because
Yeah.
that is, I feel like we have Jesus, the great lover of humanity, as our example. And we have abdicated to these angry political rhetoric. I mean, it's exactly the whole pro-grace framework is rooted in that thought that God loves people far more than either political party. And as his followers, that love is what should be flowing out of us. And I go into a lot of detail in the book, but if you actually think about why the laws are needed, it's exactly what you're saying. They're managing people who are in a situation where they don't feel like there's any other option. And let me just give an example. Almost 6 out of 10 women who have abortions already have a child. So you're talking about people that value children. Of course, they already have a child, but there are so many roadblocks in the way to raising that one child that they just can't see a way to have another one. That is a very different framework than either political side talks about, that Christians could rally around that and start asking questions. Why do we have a society that it's so difficult to raise children that this is what's happening? So that's a huge limitation of the law. It's allowing for something that a lot of people, and I know this from personal experience in interviews, a lot of people don't want. They're not growing up saying, I can't wait to have my abortion. I can't wait to exercise my right to choose. It's happening because there's pressures, there's blockages, there's societal realities, there's inequalities between the genders. You know, I found researching the book, there's called the fatherhood premium and the motherhood penalty, and there's science behind in the workplace. Men make more money as they become dads, trajectory over their whole career. Women make less when they become mothers. I mean, these are things all Christians should be deeply concerned about, because we're not starting on an equal playing field in this country of having children. The second limitation of the law, I think, goes back to theology, which is what is the whole gospel? And Paul talk about. The law was just in place to lead us to Christ. It can't actually change hearts. You know, it's exactly what you said. It's a guardrail. And so just, again, owning this piece of our faith that says grace and Jesus are far surpass the law. They're the fulfillment of the law. We've got to be thinking above laws. It's not to say laws aren't important. Not to say we shouldn't be involved in policy, but you're exactly right to frame it as limitation and what sits higher. And that is actually caring for people. And it's the similar thought to what your wife was saying, caring for people so that they have what they need brings better outcomes than just not working together as a community and then just trying to limit everything with laws.
Right.
It's why we care for people who can't afford food. You know, what if people were breaking into grocery stores and we were like, oh, we really got to legislate around that? It's like, well, let's just make sure everybody has food. You know, if we look at that first, the human condition, what's happening for people, much better outcomes than just legislation. So.
No, it's really an interesting problem. And I will say, I've shared this story with others, but my wife and I, when she was pregnant with our first child, the doctor, it ended up being a misdiagnosis, but diagnosed him with a genetic condition and actually referred us to a hospital where we could get an abortion. Yeah. We were at a Catholic healthcare system and kind of sent us over to a different place. We obviously opted not to do that. And our son was fine. But I will say, like, we felt that pressure. And I think one of the things as we've reflected back on it has been, number one, we're calling people to pray. We're asking questions. We're investigating as much as we can about what could be. But we also had a social network of people. My wife was studying to be she was working as a pharmacist at the time. So she had a professional career. I was pursuing advanced degrees in theology. We knew we had sort of a social structure, that we were going to be okay. Our finances were in order. Like, we knew this would be hard no matter where it went, but we felt we had what we needed to actually do it. And I think as I've reflected back on that, I would sit back and say, I can't imagine the immensity of the stress and pressure for someone who doesn't have those other pieces in mind.
Yes.
I would also just be honest and say, I think it's a horrible way for me to even be thinking through it, because you start like kind of putting your faith in the stuff that you have, as opposed to recognizing that just it's the wrong theological way to think about it. It's a factor. Sure, God has provided you with these things, but I think it's a really bad way for us to start those conversations. But either way, my personal connection with that suggests that we do need to look a little bit more broadly and think about how we can support people going through this so they don't have to look at their own personal finances, their own personal capacity. And is this possible for me personally? It would be great if we had like a folk, takes a village, right? To sort of support people. And so I'm wondering how does the pro-grace sort of framework and your ministry in particular, does it create that sort of broader community? What does that look like?
That's a great question. And by the way, you're basically describing the early church. So again, we have very rich theology for caring for people. So thank you for that. So much in what you said. So I want to put a bookmark in how pro-grace helps facilitate those communities for sure. Okay. Can I ask you something first? Can you remember how you felt getting a diagnosis for a pregnancy that was so altered from your wife's and your dreams, even your own reproductive story about yourself? Can you talk about the feelings that you felt in that time? What did it feel like?
I was completely confused, completely frustrated, completely angry because, it was a buddy of mine. I called him up and I kind of told him what was going on. And he just told me, he said, this thing sticks with me, right? He said, you need to mourn the life of the child that you thought you were going to have and embrace the life of the child that God has given you. And that sort of changed everything for me, not just, it wasn't just advice that I was given that would have changed had my son been born with a problem. It actually changed the way I thought about my son, period.
Right.
I think it would, I think I would have been like a devil dad who wanted to live vicariously through my son had I not had that early experience with it.
Yeah.
So I think it was a time, just the advice, you have to mourn it. There's a mourning that takes place. It's a deep, deep sorrow about what's going on amidst all of the pressure and confusion and stress and everything else. So you're kind of a big ball of lament at that point.
Yes. You're a huge ball of emotions. And this is another limitation of the political debate is it's not the weight of the emotional impact of getting pregnant, raising a child is not talked about enough. And so that's why there are all these practical things. You touched on this deep, emotional dark night of the soul piece. And we've done 4 bodies of research of women who faced unintended pregnancy. Now, these women made all 3 different choices: parenting, adoption, abortion, either with this pregnancy or other ones, in the study. And it was qualitative interviews to really get to the emotional reality. This doesn't say it's the emotional reality for everyone, but these results, and it's been over 10 years, these 4 different bodies of research, they were so consistent that the folks conducting the research were like, we can say that this is the primary emotional experience for a lot of people. And the 3 emotions are panic, incredible panic. You described it as confusion, but right? Would panic also be? Yeah. The second for them is isolation. So it's an incredibly isolating experience. Don't feel like they can tell their support system. So their parents, their partner, it's incredibly like, I'm alone with the weight of this, whether they are or not, it feels that way. And then the final is shame. And that's a very identity shattering, almost like I have to mourn the person I thought I was. I'm no longer that person going forward. And it's not what people think about like, oh, that's selfish. They're not going to be able to do what they thought they could do without a child. It's an actual identity because there is so much shame of a single person raising kids or different things in our narrative we don't even realize. It's like I didn't think I would be this. My life is over. I have to reimagine who I am. I have to think if I can provide a future for this child. And it all has to happen by myself in an incredible, emotionally shut down stage within a matter of a couple of weeks. And I think to hold the reality of that experience and to step into that as Jesus did with empathy and compassion and understanding for what that is like can pull us out of our political sides and say, what do we have as Christians to listen? So that is one piece of what people who are living out and working out the pro-grace framework is a much higher sensitivity to the reality for people with a lived experience. And the problem is in politics, it can turn into an issue. We can talk about it like it's an issue. And the fact of the matter is, it's 1 in 4 women will have an abortion in their lifetime. So chances are we're spouting this stuff to someone who had this experience directly, or their child did, or their partner did. And we're just shutting people out. They can't bring this experience because we're talking about it up here at the head level instead of living where Jesus does with this reality. So I just wanted to point that out since you had that experience.
No, it's really helpful.
Beautiful.
And just a clarification on the studies, were they primarily of women? Because I could see that the emotional response being drastically different between male and female, because no matter how you slice it, I was a supporter in that whole thing. For 9 months, I was going to be a supporter. I wasn't feeling any of that. My wife was. And so I could definitely see women responding in even almost a deeper way because it's happening to them in their own bodies. So was the research mostly on women, or did it look at women and men?
Health insurance rates in America are surging, leaving millions without affordable options. But Christians don't need to waste money on a broken system. Christian Healthcare Ministries is an alternative to health insurance at half the cost. With CHM, fellow believers contribute monthly to help pay each other's medical bills while lifting one another up in prayer. It's financial and spiritual support when you need it most. Join CHM today by visiting chministries.org/wellness. That's chministries.org/wellness.
Faith shapes how we live, and it should shape how we steward our money too. That's why 316 Financial exists. We're an online bank created to help people align their finances with their faith and their values. At 316 Financial, 10% of our profits are given back to faith-based ministries, supporting work that makes a lasting difference. It's a simple idea. Everyday banking can be a powerful way to live generously, and you don't have to sacrifice quality to bank with purpose. 316 Financial offers modern online banking, no monthly fees, free ATM access nationwide, and competitive interest rates designed to help your money grow responsibly. Whether you're saving for the future, managing everyday expenses, or looking for a bank that reflects what matters most to you, 316 Financial makes it easy to bank with intention. Learn more and open an account today at bank316.com. Banking services are provided by 316 Financial, a division of Primis Bank, member FDIC.
Great question. So this research was all on women. I've been involved in understanding another study that did involve men as well. And so 2 just really short, interesting things about this.
Yeah.
One is in the study of all women, they didn't even mention the partner at all. So even when they talked about being pregnant, it was almost like they got pregnant by themselves. That they made this horrible decision themselves. It was really heartbreaking. So that's that isolation. Not only is she carrying more, she feels like it's her. And that's this cultural narrative that it's all on the woman. And so in the studies that the other organization did, the men are feeling their own version, like you said, of, panic, isolation, confusion. Right. And there's this wall then because she's feeling like she has to carry it all. He wants to support her, but doesn't know how. And so in most cases, it created a divide between the couple, which is we don't have a framework. And there's an essay in the book by a psychologist who says we have no framework for men to process their grief. over reproductive issues. And so they're much slower to process it, where the women are much faster. And so again, there's just this divide between the genders that I would argue could also be healed by Christ if we would just pay attention to the emotional reality. And I know it's challenging for a lot of women to think about inviting men into this conversation. I get that. And I'm sure you get that. Men have done some incredibly horrible things around not listening to women, or, you know, every time I watch a movie where the woman is ostracized for the pregnancy and the man is just living his life, right? I mean, there's just so much baggage going on.
Yeah.
At the same time, we can respect that and hold that and understand when that's hard. I think two truths can be true. It's also true that we won't see the healing we want as the body of Christ unless both genders are welcomed into the conversation. And I think men can do it with a real sense of humility and respect, and you're not taking it personally right now. As I said, it's hard for men, and you're hosting this podcast. You are modeling exactly what men can do to bring a healthy framework. You're listening to women, you're wanting to understand, but we need to be advocating together for this deeper understanding. So,
no, and I think it's interesting because, I mean, even as my wife was going, so we've had 3 biological children. The second 2 were twins. And so, it's always fun when my camera does that. We're just going to leave that alone. Yeah. AI fun. But we've had, you know, she's gone through 2 pregnancies, and I could always escape.
Right.
Like if it got too stressful, I could leave, and I got to go to work, and I still got to go work out or whatever it was. My body wasn't changing the way hers was. Right. And so it was just different. It was very, very different. And to process some of those things, I got to be isolated from it. Even if I'm just sleeping in the same bed with her, I'm isolated from it. She's got something, you know, growing inside of her that she's dealing with. So I think, you know, overall, when I look at the landscape of this relationship between men and women, I get the complexities of it. I don't know. I guarantee I'm not the one to solve it, but I understand the complexity of it. And I could see why it seems a lot of times like men may be being callous about it when really they're probably just trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't deny callousness, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, and it's good to recognize that, and to, again, going back to God's design, He designed women to do this. We are very strong in an amazing way that we can do it. We do go through a lot, and He didn't design us to do it alone. So He designed us to do it within family, within community. And when that's not there for women, to your earlier point, what type of community is the Church of Jesus going to be? So when you asked about the pro-grace approach and the pro-grace community, where we have landed is that our calling, our mission is incredibly narrow. It's to help Christians have a different paradigm, to think differently, to talk differently. And then what flows out of that is Christians starting to engage differently naturally in their family, where it comes up, but wanting to engage more, which is fantastic. We need more Christians engaging in the issue. So we partner with and refer to trusted direct service organizations who are already doing that work. So what I found is there's a lot of Christians seeking to make our society more just for pregnant women before, during, and after pregnancy. There's a lot of people doing that in a lot of different organizations. And I was part of one of them. After we switched the pregnancy organization, I should say that's the end of the story. We changed the entire approach to be one of listening, advocacy, equal value, no politics. And I love that type of work. And we work with other organizations that do that. They're part of our learning community. But then we also refer to trusted organizations that we know are doing this work in a non-political, Jesus-centered way. Because I believe when we unlock the way Christians think and talk, we're going to see so many more Christians wanting to engage. And I want to keep connecting them to these organizations that are always doing that great work, because our plate is full with the paradigm shift. And then I think the paradigm shift will lead to so much fruit. Again, I'm a dreamer, so I feel like I can see all these things that could happen, but I'm not going to be the one to do them. We're going to lock arms with other people and churches as well. We've had some incredible churches. There was a group meeting at one church the church had a school. This is when I was at the pregnancy organization. We would have churches run these support groups, which is a great model, and there are organizations doing that. But this particular church wanted to figure out a way to really be with and for the women. And so they were scholarshiping them to their school, their daycare and their school. Like what a unique thing a Christian, a church can do. And that's why it looks different for every church. But the pro-grace framework was actually awakened out of having these support groups for women in churches of the women we were working with at the pregnancy organization, watching what was happening as they were welcomed in. So the whole dream started with that happening, women being welcomed and these needs being met. But our calling is way upstream with, hey, let's get the Christians community acting more like Jesus. And then those things will flow out of us. They absolutely will.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think it's actually the right approach because on some level we have to have the up, this has to bubble up from the bottom and come down from the top, right? Like it has to be sort of a multi-angle kind of thing because I can envision the conversations you have about pro-grace with people. And I mean, I'll say even, just the comment you made about, don't use the right choice language. It's like, I hear that and I appreciate it and I understand what you're saying. And I can see how we could sort of explain that sort of deep theological understanding of pregnancy and, birth and union between man and woman. And then I sit back and I say, well, it's really a deeply sort of ingrained conviction of mine, right? That I'm expressing there. And so how, I can only envision the difficulty you have going into someone and saying, hey, we've got this new pro-grace framework. I can almost see some people going, we're already doing that.
Right. Right. That has happened.
So what do you find as the most challenging aspect of your work? And, give listeners an idea of how they can rethink toward the pro-grace framework here as we kind of come to a close.
No, what a loaded question. Wow. And one thing would be, one difficulty would be being misunderstood because I wasn't saying with your language change that you can't hold these convictions. It's more just that's not sacred language. Like that didn't come from the Bible. So it's just like, let's just take out all the language that can be misunderstood and let's communicate our conviction in the same way. So that is one challenge is being misunderstood with that. And people thinking they have to, that pro-grace is asking them to change either their ethical view on abortion or their political view.
Yeah.
We aren't. We're inviting, and this is hard for people. There's no framework for this because, again, there's such a strong mental model. You either are pro-life or you are pro-choice. You're with me or you're against me. There is no mental model for an invitation to gently lay those down and just imagine how would Jesus be interacting if he were here?
Right.
That is probably the most difficult thing. And with that, I would also say part of our mental model is, oh, great. How do I go help other people? This whole idea of direct service is also a very strong mental model.
Yeah.
There are people who are very close to me who still think after 10 years that pro-grace works directly with women experiencing pregnancy. And I can't, get them out of that mental model, because that is what we think. And so getting people to understand the church matters. What matters is the church acting like Jesus, that the goal of a pro-grace approach is to look more like Jesus, full stop. And for people to really trust that, well, first to understand why it's important, but to also trust that we're, it's like, do you have a secret? That's kind of why I just mentioned right choice, because there are progressives or people on the left who would hear that and think, oh, pro-grace has an agenda because she just agreed with him that there's a, right choice. And it happens on both sides, right? People think there's an agenda, but for people to really believe, no, all that pro-grace is doing is inviting people into a space where we can ask, how can we be more like Jesus? It does take people a while to get it, to trust us, to kind of process it. And so that's why I wrote a book, was to have a longer form, and we have a course as well, because it is hard. Even we've had 40 minutes of great conversation, and I'm sure people still have questions. So I just have to be patient. I'm not patient. That's the hardest thing about my work, is I have to trust that it's God working. And if we just keep saying this over and over, people do eventually say, "Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for this. Thank you." But it can sometimes take a while. So,
well, I think it sort of, what you're talking about resonates. I mentioned I did a lot of work on politics over the last couple of years. And one of the things that I had trouble with is sort of what you're describing. When people would hear me talking about, look, we need to back this up, nest it underneath our vocation to point to and glorify God. And that may mean that we set down our political tools occasionally, exercise restraint, all these different things. People heard me saying, don't participate in politics.
Right.
But that wasn't what I was saying. And so when I was I wouldn't call it a debate, but it was kind of a debate. And the gentleman across the table was saying, if you're saying you shouldn't participate in politics, that's crazy. And I just said, look, my wife and I just adopted. Have you adopted? And he's kind of like, no. And I'm like, I'm not sitting here telling you should. I'm just not. I wouldn't. That's crazy. So why are you doing it to me?
Wow.
Like, there's an individual discernment that we have to go through on some of these things. And I think that's really part of what you're saying is, like, let's get to that point where we can reimagine things and we don't have to be red or blue. Right? You're like, let's just pull it back. And now we're discerning. Now we can come up with maybe different actions that we can't see right now because we're so blinded. We're standing behind the elephant or the donkey and we just can't see it.
Exactly. Yes. And the thing that the elephant and the donkey keep us from talking about is this imago Dei that Christians could be united around. But if we keep thinking that our brother and sister who's on the other side is either anti-child or anti-woman, and we don't start extending the benefit of the doubt that every thoughtful Christian values the imago Dei in everyone, that's the problem here, is the actual, it's not just that it's politics, it's the way the politics are framed up. Keep us from understanding each other and make us think the worst about each other, when, again, I really do believe, like, you and I have the same commitment to the imago Dei. We don't have to tell each other how we vote. There's so much that and I think this is what we're just trying to call people into. It's not just an invitation to be wishy-washy. There's these core theological tenets that run through the middle, but it's asking God to be bigger. We're trying to make God bigger into how he could creatively help us solve some of these problems. To your point, acting like a Christian first, not a red or blue. So I love that. Great.
Discipleship will open up opportunities for us. And I always go to that verse in Ephesians, God can do abundantly more than we could ever ask or think. That's what I think discipleship opens up for us. It opens us up to the opportunities God provides for us to participate in building his kingdom in ways we can never ask or think.
Amen. And it's through his power that works within us. So there's this partnership that he's calling us into. That's beautiful. And it's actually how I close the book, that passage from the Message. So I love it too. That is the dream. Yeah, we're on the same page.
Well, Angela, this has been great. We're kind of up on time. I want to respect your time. Give people where they can find the book and also learn about ProGrace, your ministry.
Absolutely. So ProGrace is at prograce.org, and the book is there. It's also on Amazon. And I will just say, if you are an Amazon purchaser, that's the only way you can review it, is if people purchase it. So if people want to get exposed to more people and they're thinking about buying it, you can buy it there and review it. But go to ProGrace for different ways you can enter the conversation, because we have a lot of different resources. Not everyone wants to take a course or read a book, but there's a way to start the conversation wherever you're at, wherever your curiosity level is. So thank you.
Okay. I'll include those in the show notes. And just a reminder for everybody, I want you to go to Amazon and review the book after you've read it. But I also want you to purchase this off IVP. They give us a 20% discount. And so you can use the code in the link. So buy it off IVP Press and then head over to Amazon and give it a review.
Yeah, head over to Goodreads. You can go to Goodreads without purchasing it. There you go. Right. Buy it from IVP. I love IVP. I didn't realize they did that. So yay. Props to IVP.
Yeah. They're really cool with that. It's been awesome to have IVP authors on. And so But anyway, Angela, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. Appreciate your ministry a great deal, and just excited to see what the future holds for you. So thanks for being on.
Thanks, James. I love what you're doing.
All right, everybody. Well, take care, and we'll see you on the next episode of Thinking Christian. Take care, everyone. Just want to take a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on the Thinking Christian podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
Have you ever attempted to read the entire Bible? Did you do it, or did you only make it part way? I'm John Stange, and I host a podcast that will make it possible for you to make it through the entire Bible, one chapter at a time. I've been hosting the Chapter a Day audio Bible podcast since 2015, and every single day of the week, I read one chapter of Scripture, then follow that up with a time of prayer. And if you're looking for daily insights and inspiration directly from God's Word, I hope you'll give the Chapter a Day audio Bible a listen. You can find it at lifeaudio.com or on your favorite podcasting app.